After 6 months under the sole administrator, Rivers State is back under democratic rule as President Bola Tinubu lifts the emergency powers imposed in March. Now, the decision restores Governor Siminalayi Fubara, his deputy, and the House of Assembly to office, marking the formal end of one of the most controversial political interventions in recent Nigerian history. While the Assembly has already reconvened to plenary, questions linger as Fubara is yet to resume his official duties, even as lawmakers press him to submit commissioner nominees and prepare the 2026 budget. Joining me to discuss this is Eromosele Ehisuan, he's a political scientist. I also have Nelson Ekujumi, is the Executive Director, Center for Rights and Grassroots. Also joining me at this time to discuss this is of course, Peter Ameh is the National Secretary of the Coalition of United Political Parties. Gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
All right, let me start with you, Nelson. Nelson, will I call it the lifting of the ban, that's the state of emergency rule in the state, and of course, the suspension, the lifting of the suspension of the governor. For you, would you say that, would you call this some sort of victory in any way? And maybe let me allow you to respond to that before I ask my next question.
Okay, for me, I think it's a victory for democracy, law and order.
Victory for democracy, law
and order. Because you recollect that the imposition of a state of emergency that accompanied the suspension of the governor, his deputy, and members of the House of Assembly was as a result of an intractable political crisis in Rivers State that was fast degenerating into a national economic crisis with the bombing of the oil installations.
But many have contested this, saying that what happened in Rivers State compared to, if we are to look at it in the context of maybe what we've seen in states like Plateau State or even Benue State, why the state of emergency in Rivers? There was no loss of life, no physical destruction, so to speak, compared to what we are seeing in many states.
Well, the circumstances or the scenarios are different.
How?
If you recollect, with regards to the issue in Rivers State, the parties went to the Federal High Court, and I'm sure you are aware of the judgment of the court, declaring the acts of the governor illegal, null and void. It went from the Federal High Court to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal also told the same stand. The Court of Appeal even had very strong words for the dictatorial actions of the governor, that the governor was behaving like the lord of the manor, that this is a democracy and not a jungle. And from the Court of Appeal, it went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, as far as the Supreme Court was concerned, there was no democratic governance in Rivers State, which means the Constitution of Nigeria had been thoroughly violated. So when you talk about Benue and Plateau states, you also understand that the state is fighting a war against criminals. And in fighting that war, there will be casualties on both sides.
Over 200 lives?
Pardon?
Over 200 lives lost.
Well, the 200 lives that have been lost, you cannot, point to the fact that the states abdicated its responsibility, and went to sleep.
Don't you think, looking at these conditions, particularly in this state, a state of emergency too, if we are to follow that same logic, should be declared in some of these states?
Well, the situation in those states are security breaches.
So what that of Rivers is what?
The Rivers State, I told you the Rivers State was a political crisis.
So it's more political than even security?
No, the Rivers State crisis even was moving from political to a national economic crisis. When you see, is when somebody tells you that we are going to give the boys order way to strike, and before you say Jack Robinson, oil pipelines are being bombed, and you know that oil is the lifestay of the Nigerian economy. So the crisis in Rivers State was gradually degenerating to become something that will affect all and sundry in Nigeria, not only in Rivers State. And even with the way it was going then, if Mr. President had not intervened in line with the constitutional provisions and with the powers vested in him by the Constitution, that bombing of pipelines might even result to total wanton destruction of lives and properties, because we have seen a situation whereby the House of Assembly complex was bombed, followed by the destruction of the house under the guise of renovating it, and even an attempt to go and bring down the legislative quarters of the legislators that was, that became a public that caused public uproar, and the executive under Governor Fubara had to make a retreat. So the situation in Rivers State was not one that the state had shown unwillingness to tackle. But the case in Rivers State was one in which the state was the engineer, the manufacturer, as well as the doer of the crisis that was threatening not only law and order in Rivers State, but law and order in the whole Federation of Nigeria.
All right, Nelson, let me leave you for a moment. Let me bring in Nelson. That's Eromosele Ehisuan. He's a political scientist. He joins virtually. Eromosele, it's great to have you again. Let me ask your, of course, take on this, the lifting of the state of emergency in Rivers State, and the, of course, lifting of the suspension of Mr. Governor in the state. For some, they see it as some sort of political, well, I call it victory right now. While for others, they just see it as pure politics at play. Maybe vindictive politics, if you may. What's your take?
Well, thanks for having me. Good evening, Nigerians. I want to stand on another point of view as regard to what my co-panelists just said. Well, Fubara is a PDP governor and should be thankful to Mr. President for the state of emergency. Do you know that the state of emergency saved Fubara from being impeached by the Rivers State House of Assembly? Let me make a highlight.
Eromosele, you said Governor Sim Fubara should be thankful to Mr. President for the state of emergency that was declared, and him being, I believe you also meant by extension, his suspension as governor in the state. So you should be thankful he was suspended.
Yes. Now, do you know why I said so? 27 members of the House of Assembly were for the Speaker, while 4 were for Fubara. Then tell me, how would the governor stand against that impeachment? There was an already planned impeachment on the governor on that particular day, because the House of Assembly had already planned. You know, the House of Assembly rejected the appropriation bill that was submitted by the governor, and they planned impeachment the next day. But when the president saw that the issue has aggravated to tension, chaos, in order to prevent it to metamorphose into anarchy in Rivers State, the president declared, he decided to use his power according to section 305 of the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria, as amended in 2011. The president declared a state of emergency. And let me tell you something, the president of Nigeria understands the law. That was why he decided to submit a letter to the National Assembly, of which the National Assembly decided to follow the state of emergency as declared by the president of Nigeria. It is a constitutional power of the president to declare the state of emergency and submit a letter to the National Assembly.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you. I need to come in here. I mean, you've made something pretty clear. You sort of insinuated that Mr. President did save the job, according to you, that is, did save the job of the then suspended governor. Of course, he's resumed now. The suspension has been lifted, even though he has not yet officially resumed work, at the State House. You said you should be thankful to him that he saved his job. But for some political observers, they feel that this precedent that has been set might just set the tone for something maybe more sinister in the future. It might even put the role or the position of governors, for instance, who are duly elected by the people, at high risk, at the peril of the executive. Do you think that this is the case here?
Yes, let me tell you, even the president of Nigeria, in his letter on the 17th of September. He said, yes, I know some persons may not be satisfied with the state of emergency, might not be satisfied, but it has to be done. Now, as it is, Rivers State has been settled. You know, during that period, there was this, the oil pipeline was set ablaze, oil pipelines. And the Rivers State was about to go to anarchy. And you know, when there is anarchy, there is no government in existence in the state. You see, the problem with our people is that they are channeling to the governor alone. Do you know that it was not only the governor that was suspended, the House of Assembly was suspended. Let me tell you, in our studies, when state of emergency is declared, every constitutional framework in the state is suspended. Then the SO administrator takes over, who rules the state as a military or a retired military officer, and takes over with decree and edit, or let's say edit as regard to the state. Edit prevails because the military rules with decree and edit. So I want to tell you that why I said Fubara should be thankful. If Fubara were impeached on that particular day, by now we wouldn't have been talking about Fubara returning to power office again, because he had already been impeached. Then there may be chaos. The president may declare state of emergency. But if the state of emergency is declared, a governor that has been impeached cannot be brought back except the House of Assembly sit and bring the governor back if need be. So why I said Fubara, he should appreciate the president, and I believe that the governor Fubara has learned lesson from this. You see, when there was a crisis, they started applying the Machiavellian's principle and philosophy, which has to do with push one person to give for Jordan to come in. And they disregarded the interest of the people that voted them into power. Certainly, what happened in the states, it means that it is leading to anarchy.
All right, Eromosele, definitely we'll come back. We'll come back to your analysis on this, but we need to go on a quick break. When we return, we'll be taking a deep dive into the era of the sole administrator and some calls that maybe that period, that 6-month period, should be probed critically. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. It's still Politics HQ on News Central Television, and we're looking at Rivers politics post the state of emergency declaration in the state. We know that that has been lifted, and of course, the suspension of the governor also has been lifted. He's allowed to resume office, but he hasn't officially resumed. Now, Eromosele Ehisuan is a political scientist, is my guest this evening. Nelson Ekujumi is the Executive Director, Center for Rights and Grassroots Initiative, and also Peter Ameh joins the conversation right now as National Secretary of the Coalition of United Political Parties. Gentlemen, thank you for staying with me. Peter Ameh, let me come to you on this one. We know that, of course, the politics in Rivers State right now, I mean, the mantle has been returned back to Governor Siminalayi Fubara. We understand that he has not officially resumed work. I mean, just from your own, what I call it, hindsight, why do you think this is? Do you think right now there is some sort of a vacuum, political vacuum in the state?
Hello?
We can hear you.
For the issue with the issue with Rivers State is the fact that the decision that was taken at Benin was not a decision that favored the spirit and letters of our constitution. It's a decision that actually undermined the principle of democratic participation in the state. So whatever decision the president took actually further went to undermine our democracy. So what the heat in the state today, there's no way you can force a relationship together and expect it to be harmonious. You can have used your power of state. You could use the authority that you have as someone who command the police, command the army, and then try to make sure that people follow the line of your order and all the interests that you have to favor your personal achievement. But at the end of the day, is that going to bring lasting peace? Is that going to be, we have what we call a pretentious attitude towards enabling environment that would look as if there's a peace authority in the state. But actually, if you look at what happened in the state today, you will see that the spirit of, those in government has been broken. The spirit that the authority that was given by the power by the people was no longer, subsiding in the state. What you see today is a shadow of democratic engagement, a shadow that even for going up to 2027, you will know that the state will still continue to heal from this misadventure, from these missteps that have led to the suspension of a democratically elected governor and his deputy. It is something that we should not in any way encourage, because this is a precedent that has been set that is very dangerous for our democratic progression. Because if somebody come up tomorrow and decide to misuse this same power to undermine other states, then there will be a justified reason to do that. But profoundly, my anger mostly goes to the Supreme Court that have allowed these 6 months to expire without listening to the matter. Because we have a judicial system, we run a constitutional democracy with a federative system that allow for principle and separation of power. And when we get into such a situation, when we are supposed to properly understand and interpret and know whether the president has the authority under Section 305, even though we know there's no such power, but a judicial pronouncement would have further reduced whatever tension are there, cure whatever illegal decision that has been taken, and develop our democracy to a point that people will build confidence in the judiciary. If you have a judiciary that sees... Hello?
All right, thank you so much for that, Mr. Ameh. Let me come to the studio right now. Nelson, let's look at the State Assembly, which was also affected, when the state of emergency was declared. But before the state of emergency, looking at the makeup of the Assembly, it was observed that about 27 of these lawmakers seemed to be loyal to the FCT minister, was the former governor of the state, and just about 4 lawmakers were loyal to the now, of course, reinstated governor. But from feelers, it appears, you talk about peace being returned to the state. Everyone seems to be, at that round table in harmony. But from feelers that we seem to be getting, within this house, there still seems to be some sort of factional segregation, particularly as regards this 4.
Well, before I go into that, I think I want to quickly make a correction. My brother Eromosele talked about he talked about the sole administrator ruling by decree. No, even the powers of Mr. President to declare a state of emergency under the Constitution is not absolute. The Constitution under Section 305 also mandates the National Assembly to approve that declaration within 48 hours. And if they do not do so, if they are in session and not on recess, if they do not do so within 48 hours, that declaration is null and void. But we saw the National Assembly, also approve that declaration. And in approving that declaration, the sole administrator, because the governor and the deputy governor, as well as the House of Assembly, had been suspended, the responsibility for lawmaking for the people of Rivers State for the last 6 months had been transferred to the National Assembly. That is why you saw that the budget or the expenditure by the financial activities by the sole administrator was always in consonance with approval from the National Assembly. So the sole administrator did not rule by decree or edict. The sole administrator was the governor by proxy, but the National Assembly became, because the House of Assembly in Rivers State had been suspended, the National Assembly became the legislature for the people of Rivers State. Then talking about what was the question again?
The question as regards the state lawmakers.
Okay, the lawmakers, yes. But like we always know, except if we want to play the ostrich, politics is about interest. There's nothing wrong if people, because of their political leaning, are loyal to anybody. But the overriding interest of why they are in that house, which is the interest of the people of Rivers State, must always be the top priority for anybody. So that the lawmakers, maybe because of what has happened in the past, because of the division in the house, the scar is still there. You and I know very well that, like we always say, Time is a healer of wounds. We have seen the bastion of democracy that we are celebrating today is that if Mr. President had not done what he did, a lot of governors would take a cue from what happened. And because they had a precedent, you remember what former governor of Edo State, Obaseki, did, where he never allowed about 9 or 14 members of the House of Assembly to be inaugurated till the exit of that parliamentary session. So we cannot have a democracy where offices or institutions of state do not have respect for the provisions of the Constitution. It states it very clearly that there's an executive, there's a legislature, and there's a judiciary. They are independent of one another, but they work in harmony to provide good governance to the people, because the governor, as the executive, will send a bill to the House to make laws. The House will look at that law and look at the overriding interest of the state, and the House will pass the law, and pass the law and send it to the governor to assent that it is the governor that will implement that law. And if anybody is aggrieved by that law that has been passed, it is your responsibility to approach the courts. The courts will now look at that law vis-a-vis the Constitution. If the Constitution has been violated or infringed upon, the judiciary will do the needful.
Mr. Ekujumi, do you consider this a victory for the FCT minister, Nyesom Wike?
No, absolutely not. Because we are not talking about the lives and property of the FCT minister. We are talking about the executive and legislature. Because
the crux of this, will I call it, political drama that we saw happen in the state, largely was between the immediate past governor of the state, who is now the FCT minister, Nyesom Wike, and the current governor, Siminalayi Fubara. Some are saying, you know what, at the end of the day, the structure, the former governor of the state had always been mentioned, is now back. I mean, we saw a local government that held before that was taken out, and then another one.
No.
I'm asking.
No, Dako, hold on. We are supposed to educate and inform the citizens. A local government election was conducted under Governor Fubara. The courts voided it. Nobody has the authority to void it. When somebody comes and say President Tinubu has acted illegally, it's merely voicing an opinion. The only institution that can tell you authoritatively if that action is illegal or not is the court. So it is not right for you to say the election was thrown away. It was because that election that took place then violated the laws.
So the election that happened under the sole administrator, would you say that that was legal?
Absolutely, until the court proved otherwise. When the other election held, it was legal, until the court said otherwise.
So you say, according to you, for you, you feel that all of this is not in any way a victory for the former governor of the state?
Absolutely no, it's a victory for, you know why I say it's a victory for democracy? If you look at the conduct of the governor, the reinstated governor, where the governor usurped, he became an usurper, the powers of the speaker, the only authority to declare the seat of a legislator vacant. We are a country governed by laws, for Christ's sake. We are not governed by the whims and caprices of anybody, no matter how highly placed you are. The Constitution, vests that power in the speaker for assembly or House of Reps, and the Senate president for the Senate.
All right.
And not the governor or the president.
All right. I'm still, of course, we'll go on a quick break now. When we return, I'm going to pose the same question to you, to Eromosele and also Peter Ameh. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. It's still Politics HQ on News Central Television. Now, let me bring you to the conversation, Eromosele Ehisuan. Of course, I said I was going to ask you too, that do you consider what we have seen in Rivers State? I know that in your opening remark, you did say that the declaration of the state of emergency did save the job of the governor, but do you also consider it a victory for the FCT minister, who was the former governor of the state, given what we saw prior at the declaration of the state of emergency?
Well, before I address that question, I want to just oppose and explicate The other aspect which the last speaker said they want to correct an impression. See, there's something, in fact, a SWAT administrator in River State. Certainly, the SWAT administrator rules alone. We can call it with edit in the state, but subject to answerable to the president, and also through the guidance of the National Assembly. It's fine. It's fine. You can say, I want to add value to this. It's necessary. Also, the other speaker that said that it's undemocratic. I want to correct an impression or say something about that. See, one of the principles of democracy is constitution, and the president followed the constitution effectively. So that is the aspect you need to understand. It is not undemocratic. Now, let me address the question you said, Dapo. It is not victory for the former governor of Rivers State, Minister of FCT. It is not between the Minister of FCT and Fubara, rather between the House of Assembly and Fubara. Though the Minister of FCT, who is a stakeholder of that state and the former governor of the state, would not sit down and allow the state to go into disarray, that the state will go into a total breakdown of law and order, which is why the Minister of FCT decided to involve to address the governor and advise him on how to govern the state, because he has experience in governance of the state. But the governor failed to listen to him. So the one thing for sure is that, see, we should be happy that we have a strong legislative body that was able to check the excesses of the governor, to put the governor to order. That is how democracy should be operated. In a democracy, if every state will have the House of Assembly to checkmate the governor, which will have checks and balances, I tell you that things will go well. But the governor, because the governor felt that they are trying to make him to feel to be decided to fight back. In the first place, he fought and brought down the House of Assembly's complex. There are another vein. He started fighting the way you find that instead of it to understand the House of Assembly and work with them, so that the state can be run in a smooth process and democratic principles will be highlighted and achieved. I think it is not about the Minister of FCT. Rather, it's between the governor and the Assembly.
All right, thank you.
I want to tell you that it is victory for democracy. We always tell people, even when it happened on the 18th of March, I appeared on ITV and I said that, see, there's one thing we need to understand, that the intervention of the president was timely. If not, Rivers State would have been in a state of anarchy.
All right, thank you so much, Eromosele Ehisuan. I'll come back to you. Let me go to you, sir. Mr. Peter Ameh, it's great to still have you on. But let me ask you this. Let's look ahead. Now, there are concerns as regards, now that the state of the emergency has been lifted, even though we know that officially Mr. Governor, according to some, has not really resumed office and all of that. But there are concerns as regards if, they will still, in terms of, I call it the autonomy, political autonomy right now of Mr. Governor. There are concerns that once he starts work, maybe he might even defect to another party, or this time around, it might be seriously be under control by, certain individuals. Do you see that happening? Do you see a Governor Sim Fubara that is truly autonomous and truly, answerable to the people of Rivers State?
First of all, we need to clear all the misconceptions and all the small personal interest narratives that have been created. What happened in the beginning was the fact that the majority of these lawmakers decamped to APC. It was an open event, but because our court felt that they were not on register of the party and whatever manipulation that happened, that was quashed. That was what led to some of the crisis. And Fubara conducted the local government election, which the court was very, very fast to adjudicate upon, and then annoy the processes. And then we came to a situation where you say that there were some misunderstanding within the state, and that's what democracy is all about. Democracy is about concentration of ideas. People must contest ideas. People must have differences, and that differences will pass through the balance and checks of democracy and the rule of law. There's no help yourself approach when it comes to democratic arrangement, like what the president have done by using the strong arm of government to undermine the democratic democratically elected governor. People talk about the fact that, oh, there would have been anarchy. Is there no anarchy in Zamfara today? What is the president doing about it? People, they are bandits, reading national anthem and giving orders in Zamfara on why they will not cease fire. So these are issues that we must be able to balance our issues. And I do not believe that what has happened will grant the governor the opportunity to freely operate the state, to have the necessary authority under the constitution to manage the affairs of the state. Today you have a state house of assembly that has been that is now on one lopsided arrangement, and the court has refused. People talk that the law of appropriation was being made by the National Assembly for Rivers State. There is nowhere in our constitution that gives the president the power to suspend governor. Two, there is nowhere in our constitution that gives the National Assembly the power to manage the affairs of the executive branch of the state. It's only the state assembly when they are curious. But what has happened today is that we ran a 6-month government in Rivers State without a proper appropriation process, without a transparency process put in place, and without accountability. First of all, those who must come to equity must come with clean hands. IBAS must give proper public breakdown of what has happened within the last 6 months. I have never seen in my life that a quasi-judicial, a quasi-leadership authority in the state will conduct a democratic election for local government councils. If not because all the intent and purposes of bringing IBAS to run the state for 6 months is to be able to hijack political structure in the state. Today you have a PDP government that was in place in the state, and today you have 20 local government elections that were conducted by IBAS and was won by APC.
Do you see Governor Fubara defecting to the All Progressives Congress?
What else will surprise me? The man has surrendered. The man has been intimidated. The man has been bullied. Federal might and federal authority has been brought to bear on the affairs of the state. The man, whatever the man do going forward, will never surprise me, because a lot of people who come to do analytical analysis feel that we should continue to progress in error. And if we continue to progress in error, it will continue to undermine our constitutional authority and the spirit and letters of our constitution. But I do not see that. I will be shocked if I wake up tomorrow and the man who have surrendered to federal might, who all sorts of authority of government of the state, of the federal level, had undermined the federating authority that we have. We naturally run a federalism. In a federalism, you have a federation. In that federation, you have this cascading authority that you have more than anytime you have more than one level of government, and you have an autonomous authority within the state that is the federating unit, that is Rivers State. Today, Rivers State has lost its autonomous authority as a federating unit and has now been subsumed and consumed by the authority of the federal government.
All right, thank you so much, Peter Ameh. Now, let me come back to you, Nelson Ekujumi. Nelson, I'm also going to ask you, do you see Governor Fubara, defecting to the All Progressives Congress? I mean, from a lot of political observers, they feel that politically he seems handicapped. As much as he's back in office, many are really questioning who really controls power in the state.
Well, you and I know very well that power in the state is vested in 3 institutions of government. That is the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Governor Fubara controls power in the executive arm, while the legislature controls theirs, as well as the judiciary. My friend who just spoke now said he will not be surprised that the governor has been intimidated. I'm sure he is aware that the governor of Delta State, who defected from the PDP to the APC, was not intimidated, or a state of emergency was not declared before he came to the APC. Same with the governor of Akwa Ibom State. A state of emergency was not. Maybe he is aware that those 2 governors who defected from the PDP were intimidated, because I believe strongly that Governor Fubara, being a custodian of the people's mandate in Rivers State, the people must have seen that quality in him before voting him into power. And that statement of a governor being intimidated, I see it as an assault on the democratic rights of the people of Rivers State. Because the people of Rivers State would never have voted for somebody who is timid. They would never have voted for somebody who does not know his right from his left. If tomorrow Governor Fubara decides to decamp to any party, he's within his rights, he's an adult. No law of this country bars him from freely associating. It's a constitutional right. So if he feels that he wants to decamp tomorrow All well and good, that is within him and his political party. But as we sit here today, the Rivers State political firmament is still being controlled by the PDP. Governor Fubara is of the PDP, while the 32 House of Assembly members are all members of the PDP.
But the just concluded local government elections, we saw what happened.
Well, that
the
is
APCs, won virtually everything.
Well, that is how the people of Rivers State decide to, cast their political destiny. I don't have a choice in that. That is their right.
All right, we'll come back, of course, to take our closing remarks, particularly what you see of the state ahead of 2027. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. It's still Politics HQ on News Central Television, and of course, these are the final moments of this episode. But before we go, let me start with you, Eromosele. Eromosele, your final thoughts, particularly, what do you see happening in the coming weeks in Rivers State in the year of 2027? 30 seconds, please.
Well, in Rivers State, I think that constitutional frameworks have been restored. The House of Assembly will be in order. The governor has been reinstated. The deputy governor has been reinstated. Certainly, Governor Fubara should, as a matter of urgency, carry the people of Rivers State along and ensure that good governance have its place, and ensure that inclusive governance have its place. Constitutional frameworks, democratic principles should be promoted. It is not time for fight. Rather, it is time for development.
All right.
At this time, we expect the governor to work out, respect all relevant authorities,
all right,
and respect those that have been before him.
All right,
so
thank you.
As allow peace and order to reign in the state.
All right, thank you very much.
I think this is my opinion.
All right, thank you. Mr. Peter Ameh, 30 seconds.
For me, I need to make some corrections I need to make a correction because for Akwa Ibom, before he decamped, the governor of Akwa Ibom, there were video recorded by television, one of your sister stations, one of a colleague station, where he said that he wants to decamp because he's afraid that he could win the election and the Supreme Court would overturn it, or they would take his mandate for him. See, all level of tactics that has been employed by the governor, by the president of this, by the APC to undermine the opposition is clear. They don't use one tactics to intimidate governors. And if you say that you have reinstated an elected governor, it is an aberration. It is an insult to our democracy. It is something that we should not accept. Even every day we must continue to fight and not look for a way to justify the illegal decision taken by the president. The president has no authority under the law as an elected president to suspend an elected governor from office or enjoy immunity under the Constitution of our Federal Republic of Nigeria. I need to ask one question. The 6 months that he was suspended for, that has undermined the Section 184, Section 2 that gives him the authority to govern the state for 4 years. Is that 6 months going to be subtracted from the 4 years so that he can have his 4 years completed as enshrined as established in the Constitution? But that also showed that this Constitution has been brutally bruised and has been undermined by the one-sided decision of the president to favor the interest of his party. So there's no way you can justify that the president said he has reinstated an elected governor of the state. It is not justifiable, it is not acceptable, and we should all reject it and so that it does not happen again in our democratic system.
All right, Peter Ameh, thank you so much. Nelson, Ekujumi.
Well, I want to appeal to the executive and the legislature that they have the opportunity to correct the mistakes of the past. And that is to ensure that they keep to the tenets of the provisions of the Constitution. We're a country governed by laws. And I want to appeal to Governor Fubara not to allow people to influence him or encourage him to repeat those lawless and dictatorial tendencies that is at variance with the provisions of the
So you feel it was misguided?
I feel he himself didn't do well and he listened to too many people. Because, as a leader, you are bound to listen to, comments from people you feel can advise you properly. But when the chips are down, you bear the brunt alone. And that was exactly what happened. So I expect that the legislature and the executive will put the past behind them and make the welfare, the prosperity, and the progress of the people of Rivers State their next agenda going forward from now.
All right, gentlemen, I'd like to say a big thank you for your time on the program. Eromosele Ehisuan is a political scientist. Nelson Ekujumi is the Executive Director, Center for Rights and Grassroots Initiative. And also Peter Ameh, the National Secretary, Coalition of United Political Parties. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for it.
All right. At this point, this, of course, is where we will drop the curtains. In case you missed out, you can actually catch up on our YouTube platform. That's at News Central TV. You can also choose to follow us across social media. The handle is there on your screen. You can choose to follow me personally at Dakbo at Digboye. Until I come your way tomorrow, good night.